hurt and pain that goes on across this country is you are speaking truth that this country needs to understand.
It'd be interesting to hear that the girl Cory Booker says he molested speak her truth in an open hearing. We eagerly await that testimony, hopefully soon. Then there was the bloodless senator from Connecticut, the guy who repeatedly lied about serving in Vietnam, trying his best to impugn another man's integrity.
False in one thing, false in everything, meaning in jury instructions that some of us as prosecutors have heard many times, is told a jury that they can disbelieve a witness if they find him to be false in one thing. So the core of why we're here today really is credibility.
The core of why we're here is an allegation for which the 4 witnesses present have all said it didn't happen.
False in one thing, false in many things. If you're Senator Blumenthal, can you even imagine saying something like that? What kind of lack of self-awareness would it take to say something like that? Remarkable. Underneath all of this, though, hung the most obvious question of the day, which nobody asked out loud. Who did this to Christine Ford? Democrats claim they held these hearings for her because they care deeply about her well-being. Yet it was Democrats who leaked her name to the press against her wishes and dragged her into this maelstrom. Who did that? Well, likely someone in Dianne Feinstein's office. Feinstein claims she was not involved. She'd like the presumption of innocence on that. Okay, so who was it? If you care about Christine Ford, about all victims of sexual assaults, you'd be very anxious to know. Maybe we could have a new investigation into that. Republicans could start one immediately, like tomorrow. Would Democrats participate in an investigation to find out who leaked Christine Ford's name to the press? Probably not. They seem strikingly uninterested in talking about Christine Ford today. They rarely asked about her when Judge Kavanaugh was on the set. Instead, they peppered Kavanaugh with questions about his Georgetown prep yearbook and how much beer he drank in high school and college. Here's one of his responses to that line of questioning.
I never sexually assaulted anyone. There is a bright line between drinking beer, which I gladly do, and which I fully embrace, and sexually assaulting someone, which is a violent crime. If every American who drinks beer, or every American who drank beer in high school, is suddenly presumed guilty of sexual assault, we'll be in an ugly new place in this country. I never committed sexual assault.
When they weren't demanding answers about his high school yearbook, Democrats stalled for time. They did that by demanding yet another FBI investigation into Kavanaugh.
Why aren't you also asking the FBI to investigate these claims?
Judge Kavanaugh, will you support an FBI investigation right now?
You could actually just get this open so that we can talk to these witnesses and the FBI can do it instead of us.
Are you willing to ask the White House to authorize the FBI to investigate the claims that have been made against you?
An FBI investigation sounds reasonable. It would be the 7th FBI investigation that has looked deeply into Brett Kavanaugh's personal conduct. He was once staff secretary of the President of the United States and had the highest level of security clearance this country gives, one that gave him access to America's nuclear codes. He got that clearance because the FBI spoke at length to a cross-section of everyone he'd ever met, going back to high school and earlier, and there were no hints of sexual assaults, none. There's nothing left to investigate here. Everyone knows that. This is a political tactic, and it's disingenuous. Why are they doing it? Well, simple. Democrats know that if the vote on Brett Kavanaugh is held soon, he will be confirmed. If it is delayed by pointless FBI investigations being demanded by demagogues in bad faith, he will not be confirmed because the accusations will never end. The incentive to make them is too strong. You'll see more anonymous claims that he led gang rapes on sailboats in Rhode Island or whatever. And this grotesque circus will continue. Our ancient standards of justice will further degrade with the help of the Senate Democratic Conference. But Democrats will retain power, and that is the point. It's the only point of all of this. But for now, and until and if that happens, no Republican senator who watched Brett Kavanaugh testify today is likely to vote against him. Those who did would be quickly punished by voters. Many viewers at home wept as they watched Kavanaugh speak today. Maybe you did as you saw it. Those of us who have been falsely accused of sexual assault by strangers understood well the feeling of terror and loneliness that shone on Kavanaugh's face. Prove you didn't do it, or everything you have will be taken from you by force. That's not an easy task for anyone. Kavanaugh came as close as a man can to clearing his own name. He didn't get a lot of help from Senate Republicans other than Lindsey Graham. The next time you're falsely accused of a crime, don't ask them for backup. Brett Kavanaugh did it all himself. He had no choice. As his life collapsed around him, he stood bravely and he spoke clearly. And it's hard to imagine a fiercer test of a man's character than that. We're going to be considering all for the next hour what happened in the Senate today and its implications, but we're going to begin, fittingly, with Fox.
Captain Jack's airboat tours. Glide through the Everglades. Experience your wild side at our animal sanctuary and our live gator show. For special deals, head to our website.
At times he was near tears, made his testimony credible. If you're accused, Tucker, and you may know this, of something that wrong and it's false, it makes you emotional.
I do know that feeling very well.
Exactly, and I think that came through. So the audience here really, it comes down to a handful of Republican senators who are undecided, at least nominally undecided. It is a little hard to imagine after today's testimony by him that they would turn against him. Remember, these allegations against him were uncorroborated when the day began, and they were uncorroborated at the end of the day still. And the only corroborative evidence really that was produced were his old calendars and diaries that he produced. They're not dispositive, but there's something. And so it comes down to his word against his, and he seems to me, at least as credible as she was. So I think, at this point, it's utterly regrettable that we got here. The process has been damaged for years. Now it's ruined. And this is where we are. One hopes he may survive it.
The moment that shocked me the most
Hello again, and welcome to the Geico Dome. As always, we're pitting two dishes against each other, inspired by a sports rivalry. These dishes will then go before our esteemed panel of judges in the ultimate fan food showdown. I'm Chip Harrington. And I'm Bob Wilson. And this is Eat Like a Fan, sponsored by Geico. In this episode, we're diving into the biggest rivalry in the NFC East, the Dallas Cowboys versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Bob, I don't think it gets any more American than a cowboy fighting an eagle over something trivial. They might as well call themselves the Dallas Baseballs and the Philadelphia Apple Pies. I think the Baseballs would be a weird name for a football team, but I could get down on some apple pie. Well, Chip, I'm sorry to disappoint, but there doesn't appear to be any apple pie on the menu for today. But it does look like we have some other amazing ingredients that we will be chopping for the championship. Let's meet some of them now. For the Eagles, we have almost every kind of cheese I can imagine. And representing the Cowboys, we have some rice, brisket, and some tortillas. And without further ado, let's get ready to eat like a fan. And it looks like Amanda is flying high today representing the Philadelphia Eagles. And we are grilling some white onions to get us kicked off. Along with some peppers, it appears, Bob. I believe that is steak I see, Bob. It is, and it is thinly sliced. Amanda is toasting a hoagie while cooking the peppers, onions, and steak. She is adding provolone. And it's not provolone anymore because she just added some white cheddar. A Philly cheesesteak specialty, Cheese Whiz on the hoagie bun, Bob. And to top it all off, some classic hot sauce. He is gonna spice it up. And they're soft pretzels, which we all know is a Philly favorite. What we have here, Chip, is an Eagles pretzel cheesesteak atop a toasted hoagie roll, thinly sliced ribeye steak, soft pretzel bits, Cheese Whiz, American cheese, provolone cheese, sauteed onions, green peppers, hot sauce, and salt and pepper. And yee-haw, it looks like Greg is ready today with the backwards cap and all. Equipped with his own cowboy hat, Greg is drizzling some cilantro in some white rice. And there is a lime he is squeezing as well. I would call that extra point pretty good. And look at that brisket, so tender it's just falling apart. Just like Tony Romo against the Seahawks. Oh! Brisket going directly on top. I hope we start adding some of that rice, and we will. We are going to sprinkle some cheese, I believe. More cilantro. And this cowboy is fully armed with his barbecue and hot sauce. And he is going to shoot that on top of everything. Greg's getting pretty liberal with that hot sauce. Which is surprising because the Cowboys are from Texas. Now he's going to wrap. Oh! And he took it to the grill. He went all the way with this burrito. Oh, and a flip! Look at that. That is one incredible flip. And now the classic cross-section. That is absolutely incredible. And here we have the Dallas Cowboys barburrito. A flour tortilla, a Texas dry rub grilled brisket, Texas barbecue sauce, white lime rice, cilantro, Monterey Jack, and mild cheddar cheese and hot sauce. I don't know about you, Bob, but those two dishes look like two of the most delicious dishes we've had on this show. I don't envy the judges having to make a decision, but I definitely envy the fact that they get to eat them. Me too, Bob. Let's cut to them now.
Oh.
Oh, what is that? There's tiny breads on it.
I think it's a pretzel.
You should put it in your mouth because it's good.
That cheese whiz is pretty clutch.
Are you a cheese whiz? I like cheese. I like beef. I like bell peppers.
Steak is a little thick. Other than that, I think it's really good.
I think it's delicious.
Yeah.
I just bit into a hot piece of meat. I think it's all a combination, like of the beef, the cheese, and the bell peppers all taste really good together.
Ooh, a little taco.
Burrito.
Sorry, burrito.
That's good. A hint of barbecue.
There's a little bit of tang in there.
Is it lime?
Yeah. I like that it's not like the last one was good, but it was a little bit sloppy.
It's a little spicy.
I was gonna say I think the barbecue kind of makes it.
I like that little bit of tang.
While you're talking about it, I'm just gonna eat this whole thing.
So I'm going with the Dallas Cowboys barburito because it was a little bit of sweet, a little bit of tangy, a little bit of spicy, just like me.
And our first judge had a decisive vote for the barburito.
Indeed, if I was the cheesesteak, I would not want to have to follow that.
My mouth says that both were delicious and amazing, but I hate the Dallas Cowboys, so I'm going for the Philly cheesesteak.
Oh, and it appears our second judge might be a little biased, but we do have a vote for the cheesesteak.
And I do not see a flag on the play, so I think that's good.
Indeed, Bob, indeed.
After a lot of soul searching and thinking, I think I finally decided to go with the Philadelphia cheesesteak. And if the whiz is good enough for Michael Jackson, it's good enough for me.
Oh, man, I did not know who was going to make it out of this one.
I was on the edge of my seat the whole time.
Absolutely incredible.
Incredible, Bob, absolutely.
Thanks for watching this week's episode.
And tune in next time for our next Fan Food Mashup.
I'm Bob Wilson.
And I'm Chip Harrington.
And this has been Eat Like a Fan. Sponsored by Geico.
An enemy in that sense, but in this setting, of course she was. She was the one pitted against him.
She has harmed him.
Yes. She's harmed him, certainly. And, you know, that this is the kind of people. I don't know Brett Kavanaugh, but I know his father, so I know the family to some extent. I also know her father and that family to some extent. They're fine people, all of them. So that's one of the things that makes this thing so terribly sad. But yes. I think that was a moment, and then I think when Senator Lindsey Graham, who I think has been indignant about this for weeks now, got his turn. He wasn't having any questioning done by somebody else. He made as powerful a statement and denunciation of this process and what's happened to it as any I've ever heard from anybody in this town. I've been around here a long time.
That was an unbelievable moment. We're going to play clips from that in just a minute in case you missed it. That was a moment, for sure. I will never forget that. Brett, thank you very much.
Good, Tucker.
During her testimony earlier today, Christine Ford said she had no doubt she was the victim of Judge Kavanaugh 36 years ago.
Dr. Ford, with what degree of certainty do you believe Brett Kavanaugh assaulted you?
100%.
Senator Lindsey Graham, who has been a judge and a defense attorney, said much more was needed. Shortly after Kavanaugh's opening statement, he denounced the entire process as a sham and a disgrace with a level of vehemence we almost never see in the U.S. Senate. Watch this.
If you wanted an FBI investigation, you could have come to us. What you want to do is destroy this guy's life, hold this seat open, and hope you win in 2020. You've said that, not me. You've got nothing to apologize for. When you see Sotomayor and Kagan, tell them that Lindsey said all of them, because I voted for them. I would never do to them what you've done to this guy. I cannot imagine what you and your family have gone through. Boy, y'all want power. God, I hope you never get it. I hope the American people can see through this sham, that you knew about it and you held it. You had no intention of protecting Dr. Ford. None. She's as much of a victim as you are. God, I hate to say it, because these have been my friends. But let me tell you, when it comes to this, you're looking for a fair process, you came to the wrong town at the wrong time, my friend. You have interacted with professional women all your life, not one accusation. You're supposed to be Bill Cosby when you're a junior and senior in high school. And all of a sudden you got over it. It's been my understanding that if you drug women and raped them for 2 years in high school, you probably don't stop. Here's my understanding. If you lived a good life, people would recognize it. To my Republican colleagues, if you vote no, you're legitimizing the most despicable thing I have seen in my time in politics. You want this seat? I hope you never get it. I hope you're on the Supreme Court. That's exactly where you should be. And I hope that the American people will see through this charade. And I wish you well, and I intend to vote for you, and I hope everybody who's fair-minded will.
When was the last time you saw something like that in a Senate hearing? Molly Hemingway is the senior editor with The Federalist, and she joins us tonight. Watching Lindsey Graham give that speech, and we truncated it. I mean, it's worth pulling up and watching the whole thing. Not reading from notes. I mean, most of these people are reading directly, from a script written by staff. He meant that.
Yeah, and I think he really spoke to a lot of people who feel like the sane part of the country has been taken hostage by the insane part of the country. What we have witnessed in these last couple of weeks is just a travesty. Anyone who cares about rule of law, presumption of innocence, having meaningful legal and political institutions is wondering just what's going on. The media are throwing their credibility away. They're diminishing all of their standards. And Democratic partisans also behaved shamelessly, depending on how you look at it. And it is something that I think a lot of people don't understand what was unleashed by this behavior by Democrats and the media. There is extreme sadness at what we saw happen to this man.
Yes.
There's so much anger, too, and a desire to make sure that we do not let this happen, regardless of if you're liberal or conservative, Democrat or Republican. We have standards for how we do things in this country. We have standards for what we demand before we declare someone guilty.
If the Republican Party was doing this right now to a Democrat, I would attack them as vehemently. This is totally immoral, and it is nothing. I don't know Kavanaugh. I don't know anything about him. I don't care. This is wrong.
I think it's so beyond a Supreme Court nomination. It's even beyond this man's honor and his name and his integrity, which he clearly cares a lot about. To me, this is about the Republic and whether we will do things this way, whether we will let our political and legal institutions crumble, or whether we have a higher standard that we're known for that's built into our Constitution in the Sixth Amendment, where we have rights for people who are accused and where we don't destroy people's lives because we disagree with them politically.
I had, honestly, at least 10 people text me today to say, men too, that they were weeping as they watched his testimony.
I was sobbing when I was watching it. I heard that a lot from people as well. It was hard just to watch these clips here. I commend that 10-year-old daughter for praying, and I think a lot of people who are Christian or people who pray should think about doing that, because this is one such time. It is hard to watch what this family has gone through, and it's a reminder. It's not there are standards for when you accuse someone, that there must be evidence to support that.
Yes.
We did not have any additional supporting evidence today, any at all. It's not an issue of whether you find one person compelling or another person compelling. It's an issue of whether we have evidence to convict someone in this court of public opinion or otherwise, to destroy their life. And we did not get that today.
That's exactly right.
This is actually a fairly simple issue at this
point. It told us everything. Lindsey Graham summed it up perfectly. He said, this is about power, you want power, and I hope you never get it. And that's how I feel about it. Molly Hemingway, you've been great on this. Thank you very much. There's a lot more to be said about what happened today in the Senate. Up next, we'll hear what legal and law enforcement experts have to say about what they heard.
Details about that night that bring me here today are the ones I will never forget. They have been seared into my memory and have haunted me episodically as an adult.
I swear today, under oath, before the Senate and the nation, before my family and God, I am innocent of this charge.
That's where the debate would have remained. Professor, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Besides Christine Ford and Kavanaugh himself, the chief figure of today's hearing was the Arizona prosecutor, Rachel Mitchell. Did she ask the right questions or miss anything important, possibly a rhetorical question? Francie Hakes is a former DOJ National Coordinator for Child Exploitation Prevention and Interdiction, and she joins us tonight. As I watched these hearings today, I kept thinking how alone Brett Kavanaugh was. I'm not attacking the prosecutor who asked the questions on behalf of Republican senators in the first half, but Kavanaugh seemed to be the only one making a case for Kavanaugh.
You know, Tucker, unfortunately, I agree with you. Although the way I look at it is that Kavanaugh was the only person even trying to challenge the allegations, which I think was the role of Miss Mitchell. And while I think she did a couple of things well, establishing possible political bias in the sense of the delay of the hearing, you know, this ridiculous allegation that she was afraid to fly, she certainly blew that one out of the water. And this elucidation of the issue of whether or not Ms. Ford or Dr. Ford delayed, in her own words, coming forward with this information. She said that she knew about Brett Kavanaugh's position on the short list and that she was determined to prevent his nomination. And yet somehow this PhD was unable to figure out how to call either of her two senators, both of whom sit on the Judiciary Committee. So I thought Ms. Mitchell did.
Get into a shiny new Nissan for an amazing low price. Stock is limited, so test drive one today before it's gone. Only at Nissan of Tustin in Tustin, California. Check out more vehicles like this at nissanoftustin.com.
Price. I have to say, on the plane thing, though, I wondered about, I mean, she established that Christine Ford has flown an awful lot. But I thought what she could have teased out a little bit is why she lied about it in this case. We can't come to Washington to testify because she can't get on an airplane. This had a politically significant effect, delaying the confirmation of Kavanaugh. That's a lie. Why is nobody saying that?
Well, I don't know. And I thought Judge Kavanaugh did a brilliant job of explaining what that delay has meant to him, his family, and his reputation and their future. You know, prosecutors like to say, don't ask a question you don't know the answer to, so don't ask a why question. All trained prosecutors know that that's just garbage. You have to ask questions you don't know the answer to. That's what happens in every trial. You often don't know the answer. She should have challenged Dr. Ford, and she did not.
Right. Yeah, I noticed. I was grinding my teeth throughout. Francie Hicks, thank you very much.
Thanks, Tucker.
Well, the media, for reasons that aren't exactly clear, are using the allegations against Judge Kavanaugh to attack people on the basis of their skin color, though, of course, everyone in the story is the same color. It's totally bizarre. It's everywhere. Nobody mentions it, but why wouldn't you mention it? Because it's totally wrong. We'll have more on it when we come back.
think...
You know, I mean, you know, who won the election?
Yeah, no,
the guy the guy from the Access Hollywood tape won the election.
But don't go back to 20...
So, if you don't believe the allegation made by a white woman against a white man, you're a racist. What the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Tammy Bruce, a radio show host, president of Independent Women's Voice, and a wise person. She joins us tonight to unravel the complexity of this world.
Right, look, we've spent clearly, 150 years at least, arguing that your complexion does not equate to who you are, what your morals are, how smart you are, what your intentions are, what you do in life. Hundreds of thousands of us died fighting to make sure that our skin color would not matter, that we rejected that notion. And now in the 21st century, the Democrats, who have nothing to argue with, who have been rejected on the issues of principles, on the foundation of legislation, on ideas, they have failed. They've damaged this country. We're bringing it back, and what they're trying to do is appeal to the worst part of us. They want individuals to look to the worst parts of themselves, to think awful things about other people, about Tucker, the very personal aspects of who we are, our gender, our race, our ethnicity, maybe ultimately our age, certainly gender. And this is the everything with Kavanaugh, certainly, and maybe that's why the liberals have been inspired to go even further, has been about the worst in what they want from people, arguing for divisions, looking for these emotional buttons to have people certainly be upset, to not trust their neighbor or even themselves, to really look at America again as being evil. This now is what the Democrats have become. We saw it on display today. We've seen it destroy. I don't think it's destroyed Judge Kavanaugh yet. Obviously, Dr. Ford's life is changed forever. We all deserve better, and what we will not do is go back to that time in this country where gender and race defined who you were.
Exactly.
We have fought to change this.
Amen. Let's not put up with this garbage. Seriously.
Exactly.
Let's speak out against it. Don't let them divide this country along tribal lines.
Exactly.
Which is what they do, even as they accuse their opponents of doing that. It's always projection. Tammy, that's so nicely put. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Nice seeing you.
Our coverage of the Brett Kavanaugh hearing continues in just a few minutes. Professor Alan Dershowitz told us yesterday he thought that the pick of Rachel Mitchell as outside counsel might not be a wise move. Was he vindicated? He joins us next to tell us.
Complaint.
you know, we hear from the witnesses, but the FBI isn't interviewing them and isn't giving us any facts. So all we have...
You're interviewing me. You're interviewing me. You're doing it, Senator. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're doing it. That's there's no conclusions reached.
That was Brett Kavanaugh responding to Senator Dianne Feinstein in California at today's hearing. We spoke with retired Harvard professor Alan Dershowitz ahead of today's hearing. Now that it's over, what did he think of the outcome? Professor Dershowitz, of course, the author of the best-selling The Case Against Impeaching Trump, and he rejoins us tonight. Professor, thanks a lot for coming on. You watched the hearing from beginning to end. What's your assessment?
Well, when I watched her, I really thought she was extremely credible, and I had grave doubts as to whether he could win the credibility contest. But then he made this remarkable comeback, and he really testified in a completely compelling manner. So I think in the end, there is a tie when it comes to personal credibility. So how do you break the tie? I think one way is to look for corroboration, and he has much more corroboration on his side. Now, the best way to make sure that corroboration is accurate is for the committee to call the other witnesses and let the FBI continue its background check. And I think in the end, it will do him more good than harm.
Now, when we spoke yesterday, you said that you were concerned about the choice of Rachel Mitchell from the Maricopa County Sex Crimes Investigations Office in Arizona to speak on behalf of Republican senators as they questioned Christine Ford. And your point was, well, I think we have a clip. I'll show you your point.
Sure. See, the greatest engine of truth ever invented, used effectively, namely cross-examination. And I'm worried that we don't have the right people. The woman who has been hired to conduct the cross-examination has probably rarely ever cross-examined anybody. She's a prosecutor. So I don't think she's the right person to question Dr. Ford. You know, I was criticized very much for making that point, and I turned out to be 100% right. She was totally and completely incompetent in terms of asking cross-examination questions because she has little experience. For example, the main issue now is whether or not she recognized Kavanaugh correctly. She was never asked how well she knew him, how many times she encountered him before this, how close was their relationship. There was nothing that could raise questions about whether, even if she believes she's telling the truth, she may have misidentified. So she just did a terrible job, and I think the Republicans realized that, and they canned her right in the middle. But it was a very bad choice.
So those of us who ask questions for a living sat and watched with our mouths open, wondering throughout, what is the point of this? Not that she's a bad person or stupid, but
no.
You would think, I mean, you've been around congressional testimony before, you've testified. When you are asking questions of a witness, aren't you doing so in order to prove a point, tell a story? You're doing so for some reason, aren't you?
You have to have a theory. Every question has to be part of a tactic. You ask question A in order to lay a foundation for B. She was just asking questions. It just didn't seem to go anywhere. She didn't have much of a point, and in the end, she accomplished nothing.
Yes, Brett Kavanaugh defended himself. Nobody else was, other than Lindsey Graham. Thank you, Professor. It's great to see you, and I just wanted to let our viewers know what a prescient prediction you made. That's
let
for
the
sure.
Truth come out. That's what we're all interested in.
Thank you, Professor. Well, more than once, widely believed allegations of sexual abuse have been exposed as fraudulent. What happens to the victims in those cases? An attorney who knows very well joins us next.
The request for proposal process can be a real pain. You need to quickly research an industry you've never worked in, search for potential vendors in that industry, hope the ones you find are quality, come up with a bunch of questions, hope the vendors will actually want to work on your project, and then try and compare several different proposals. Fortunately, there's Synlio. Synlio simplifies the entire RFP process. It has proven pre-developed templates of questions for dozens of industries, or it's easy to create your own templates. You can even use your own reliable vendors, or Synlio will pull from its network of thousands of trusted service providers ready to work on your project. Best of all, the proprietary analysis engine makes comparisons of proposals a snap. No longer do you have to spend hours putting everything together. Simply use Synlio and enjoy all the free time you've found. Moreover, you'll know you found the right vendor for your project, so everyone is happy. So forget the old way and let Synlio make your RFPs easy.
Well, you don't have to search far to find examples of fraudulent sexual assault accusations. Some of us have lived them. Some of those accusations are widely believed, but that does not make them true. What happens to those who are falsely accused in such cases? Libby Locks knows well. She represented UVA Dean Nicola Ramo after Rolling Stone made the dean a villain in their fake story about a gang rape that never took place at UVA. Libby Locks joins us tonight. So, Libby, the reason I was so interested in talking to you is that we never sort of follow up in these stories. What happens to people who've been accused of some horrifying sex crime falsely? The smoke clears, nobody asks them any other questions. What happens to their lives?
Well, it's a big problem when your name is dragged through the mud, the national press, like my client's was. You know, clients are faced with a choice of whether they put out a lot of money and
Yes.
spend on lawyers to litigate to clear their names, or finding lawyers who are willing to take on their case on a contingency basis and try and clear their name. And the hurdles that you have to overcome in a defamation claim as a plaintiff are incredibly high. And Dina Ramo, to her credit, she was brave. She brought those claims, and she hired us. We litigated it pretty fiercely, and we vindicated her reputation. But it's not all people who are dragged through the mud have the
No, they
means or
don't. I mean,
resources to
the
do it.
Duke lacrosse players who were called rapists for 6 months on TV by the morons on cable news, all innocent.
And that prosecutor who lost his bar license.
That's right.
Yep.
Mike Nifong. What about the kids in the fraternity who were accused of raping women when they didn't?
Yeah.
Did they ever,
and
were they made whole?
They had challenges too. They one group of students brought a lawsuit in the Second Circuit, brought a lawsuit in New York, and it was dismissed. It was thrown out. They said, you can't bring it because you weren't named in the case. And they had to appeal that up to the Second Circuit. They waited years to have their chance, and they went back, and Rolling Stone settled that case. But, you know, it's a long process.
It's unbelievable. Well, 50 years ago, you would have been a liberal hero for doing what you're doing. And I'm sure now they mock you. Libby, thanks very much for what you do and for coming and
Thanks for
talking
having
to us
me.
about it. I really appreciate it. Well, it's been an unbelievable day, but it's not over.